Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliet Bosham and I'm here with Macworld Executive Editor Michael Simon, as well as Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus. So we're still waiting to hear when exactly Apple is going to announce their alleged April event. But what we do know is that they've announced WWDC, their annual developers conference, is going to take place the week of June 7th. So we're going to be discussing what to expect, what software updates, maybe some new hardware. Who's to say? We'll be diving into it. We are also broadcasting live on LinkedIn as well as on YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments while we're talking, we will certainly answer them live. So do leave them in the comments or the chat section. So, question of the hour. What is coming at WWDC?
Michael?
Well, I had to start this.
You're the Macworld executive editor.
Oh, I am.
Come on, it comes with the promotion.
Come on, man. With the promotion goes great power. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. So for starters, the announcement for WWDC came a little bit later this year. Usually it's like early to mid-March, like March 13th, 15th-ish. And we were waiting for it. In fact, we had just written our Here's What's Coming from Apple in April article, where we look at like Apple TV stuff and iOS updates and whatever rumors are out there. And I had written a little line that said, we also will probably get the WWDC date because it's a little late this year. And lo and behold, they did it on March 30th, and I had to cross that section out and put a note in. But it usually comes earlier. Last year, they announced that there was going to be WWDC in June, but they didn't actually announce the date because of obvious reasons at the time. The pandemic had just hit the U.S. Mm-hmm. Everything was very much in flux, and they announced the actual dates, which were later in June for the first time in a while. I think it was not till like late April,
like the 20th, wasn't it? Something like that.
It was the 23rd or 20th or something. But when they announced when it was going to be, it was pretty close to the actual event time. So it's nice to know we have an event on June 7th when it's supposed to be. The keynote will kick off at 10 a.m. They haven't announced that, but it'll be 10 a.m. that morning, Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. What we know for sure, iOS 15, Mac OS, it looks like Mac OS 12, they're going to start a different numbering system with the Mac. We know we had OS 10, 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, et cetera, all the way up to 15. And then last year they did Mac OS 11. And it looks like this year they're going to do Mac OS 12. So we can expect that to continue, probably Mac OS 12, 13, 14, 15, et cetera, until we get to like Mac OS 37 and it starts being a little bit weird. like when do these numbers start being strange? Like there was a time when the iPhone 13 sounded weird. Yeah. Now it really doesn't because we're just expecting it. But at some point Apple has to stop. Not just Apple, it's a lot of companies. Like these numbers are just weird.
They're going to go back to real names. It may not be California place names or Big Cat names, but at some point, they'll let a few years go by and it's like, ooh, a name change.
Maybe. I miss the days when it was just, the MacBook. I mean, all right, it still is just the MacBook, but for everything. Like we would be on what, like MacBook 49 by now? MacBook Pro 56. It just doesn't, it's weird. Anyway.
Doesn't roll off the tongue.
So iOS 15, iPad OS 15, which I hope brings, particularly on the iPad side, some new stuff. iPad OS 14 was a massive letdown, in my opinion. iOS 14 was excellent, is excellent. The iPad version, I don't know. It's supposed to be, they split it for a reason. That reason right now seems to be we're going to put all the good stuff on the iPhone and not really know what to do with the iPad still. And I don't think there's a whole lot hardware-wise coming from the iPad. Even like forget WWDC, like the whole year. Okay. iPad Pro is going to be pretty much the same. iPad Air was just updated. iPad Mini maybe some slight bezel shrinking, but nothing revolutionary. Maybe the base iPad loses the home button too. So I think all of whatever changes Apple has to bring, and it has to do it relatively quickly because the iPad it's in no man's land at the moment. I think iPad OS 15 needs to bring something that pushes the iPad to like a real post PC, not an iPhone level. Can you use one every day? Let me know what you want.
Well,
or expect.
I know how much you love iPad OS. We've talked about this, and
And I
you
do
know,
love the iPad. It's just the OS drives me nuts.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it definitely needs another overhaul. I know that there were a lot of changes last year. The keyboard with the cursor and the trackpad, and how it's
But it
sort of
didn't bring anything.
no,
All
but
it did was add a cursor and make things more
yeah,
confusing because now you have gestures
that
and
don't work.
clicking and they don't really sync with each other. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So I would love to see something in iPad OS 15. Yeah.
15, like
Um,
a big change. Like I want that to be the big monumental OS change. Is that
yeah.
not iOS? iOS 14 was excellent. And I don't think iOS 15, make it more of a maintenance release and say, okay, here's a couple of features,
Sure.
but the big stuff is coming with iPad OS 15.
It is interesting to note, I don't want to let this slip by. Last year, it seems like it's been a long time now, but last year, because of the pandemic, was the first time that Apple had done the virtual event. And now they've had several of them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they do them really well.
And they're awesome. Yeah. And I hope
They
stay
really
forever
are.
doing
I'm
it.
really looking forward to the event itself, just for the production
Agreed, yeah.
effort that Apple puts into it. It makes it, they can cram a lot of information into what seems like a short amount of time, even if it goes an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah. David Price over at Macworld UK wrote an article today about why they should be virtual from here on out. And he brings up a lot of good points. Yeah, you can make it tighter and more seamless and more fun. You can turn it on a dime. Like if Apple wants to add something at the 0 hour, they can do that without overhauling the entire stage presentation. You don't have all those awful applause breaks, both from the crowd and from the presenters, because they break knowing, okay, the crowd might clap here. And what's interesting about that is it colors your opinion of what Apple's releasing, or anyone. When people are clapping for something, it's hard not to get that into your head, like, oh, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Well,
it's
don't
not.
you think that was the point of Apple
Well, of
doing
course.
it that
Oh,
way?
absolutely. Yeah, no question. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. But I mean, even just, production graphics, just being able
Yeah.
to, when they switch from person to person or announcement to
It's
announcement, and
awesome.
you're flying into the headquarters and you're going down into the secret
Yeah.
chamber and all that. That, it makes it more of a real event.
And really, Apple's the only company that did that so well. Like everybody had virtual events last year, Google and Samsung and Microsoft and everybody. I watched a bunch of them. Apple's was the only one that was, it was like a movie. It was compelling. Like you didn't want to take your eyes away from the screen. Most of them I put in the background and just listen to the audio.
Yeah.
Apple's I watched.
Yeah.
And it's not just because I
eye-candy.
work for Macworld. It was good.
Well, listen, I mean, obviously, we get software because this is technically geared toward developers.
That's the crux.
But are we
iOS,
going to get any
macOS.
hardware?
Well, I think so. I think we'll see some new Macs or
Really?
a new Mac
Like
at
which
least.
ones? Like an iMac or?
Well, the iMac is the one that keeps getting rumored. They killed the iPad. They killed the iMac Pro. They got rid of a couple configurations of the lesser iMacs that people probably weren't buying. And there has been a rumor now since last WWDC that there's this redesign in the works.
For the
it's
iMac.
definitely coming this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Spring, summer has traditionally been Apple's time to update the iMac. They've done other things here and there, but the iMac Pro, we got the glimpse of WWDC. The iMac was, I guess that was January. That was Macworld San Francisco. But Apple, they don't usually wait till the fall to do iMacs. The fall is usually MacBooks. I don't think they necessarily have to stick to that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see a new iMac, maybe that MacBook Pro that we've been hearing about, maybe even a peek at what the M1 or M2 Mac Pro is going to bring. Because they've also used the WWDC stage to tease high-end, ultra high-end Mac stuff like the Mac Pro and the Mac Pro before that isn't shipping for 6 or 8 months, but they want to show it to these people because these are the people who are going to buy it.
Right.
It's a little different when they're not in the audience and they can't do hands-on stuff, but it's still, that's their key demographic. Like my dad's not sitting down to watch WWDC. he'll call
He's
me up and
missing
ask
out,
me
man.
what happened.
Right.
But he will watch, people do watch the iPhone stuff, and it's
Totally.
Apple and it gets attention. So I think that, their captive audience is the people who want, need, and can afford that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see those Mac things. Other hardware, I don't think. I mean, obviously, no iPhone. They haven't done that in years outside of
Yeah.
September. No Apple Watch, HomePod. Forget it. That's they just came out with the Mini. That probably won't be updated for a couple of years now.
Any chance at all of the glasses? And I ask that because the graphics with the
Yeah.
announcement of WWDC, the little kid.
They're all wearing glasses.
AR, VR, Well, I mean,
True.
But I did see a lot of speculation that this is the year they lay the groundwork for the glasses to come out next year.
I mean, the conventional wisdom is that the consumer product isn't coming out anytime soon, but there might be a developer kit with an Apple designed mixed reality headset that goes along with it to help, because like everything else, once this thing comes out, they're going to need a bunch of applications, and it's not that designing for the iPhone is easy or the Apple Watch, but it's a totally different way of thinking. Like I don't think there's any developers out there that can just simply port an iPhone app to an AR app. Like it's a totally separate thing.
No.
I mean, there are AR apps that are out there for the iPhone, but there's not many of them. And if Apple's going to want a fairly robust library at whatever this thing launches, they're going to need developers to get their hands on it, real early, like a year or maybe a year and a half before it comes out. They also did that with Apple Watch. They gave a 6-month. Same thing with iPhone. They gave 6 months. This, I think, needs longer, because of that reason that developers are going to have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how does my app or my concept or my brand or whatever it is work in AR? I mean, it's a different way of thinking. It's a totally different thing. So we could see a developer kit, but I don't think Apple would frame it like here's our next big thing product.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll talk about frameworks and AR Core and ML Core and things like that, or AR Kit. ML Core is Google stuff. ML Kit, AR Kit, whatever Apple calls it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll frame it as an advancement of that. Oh, and here's some hardware you can use to develop your stuff.
Sure.
All leading toward one day, or possibly next year, a consumer glasses.
Well, you're making but I mean, to take your point, if Apple does want to have a healthy number of apps ready to go for the glasses, whatever they're called, whenever they arrive, almost by default, given what you said, given the lead time needed to develop that stuff, we'll know, obviously, or we'll assume something is coming because of the way Apple is pitching this, because it needs a software in place before the glasses arrive.
Well, I mean, the software's there, technically. We have it on our iPhones. We have LiDAR. We have the apps. We have the system. The AR kit is there. There are some apps that work really well. I don't use them. No one uses them because they're not made for that type of device. Apple knows that. No one is holding their phone up like this to scan rooms, and like it's not a seamless, intuitive experience. There's some cool stuff that you can do with Google Maps, and there's some cool stuff you can do with the Measure application, and it's handy. But for the most part, AR won't be AR. It won't be a thing until it's as seamless as it is to do the other things in our lives. Like it just has to be incorporated into our life.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Julia. It sounds like you want to say something. I keep cutting you off.
No, it's okay. I just want to take a few steps back because we got a great viewer question over on YouTube. Donnie asked, what do you all think would improve the iPad OS? And I also have a similar question. I mean, Ken, you're using it all the time. Do either of you have any thoughts about what specific things you'd like to see in the next update?
I know Michael has some thoughts.
I do have thoughts.
Quick, and then he can rant for a few minutes. Well, I mean, clearly the home screen on the iPad is still the same basic home screen that has been around for about 10 years now. And I think Apple really needs to reimagine, the information provided, how icons are done. You've got this grid of icons, and it just feels really stale. Uh, and Michael already mentioned earlier, I kind of like the cursor, but I would like for the cursor to act like it does on a desktop or a laptop. It is weird to have a trackpad and a keyboard and a cursor to do things on the iPad, but when you go to click or move or drag or whatever, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Michael's spot on there. It's little things like that. I mean, and I get Michael's point too. I don't think Apple really knows quite what to do with the iPad. And so it's sort of trying different things, and it's sort of a feint in this direction and a feint in that direction. And nothing has really gelled yet. So, it definitely needs some work. It's going to vary from user to user exactly what they want. But I think it's a valid point. Michael, rant
Yeah.
away.
I mean, the first thing we need is iOS 14. They gave us this great app library
Right.
on the iPhone. It's
It's
fantastic.
like a big design overhaul. Yeah.
It's not on the iPad. You're stuck with your icons on the desktop. Why? Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. So that's one. Two, the widgets need to be designed for the iPad. They can be bigger, they can be more robust, they can be more interactive. Right now they're stuck to the left side of the home screen. I get rid of them because they're just useless over there.
Yeah,
Sure.
I do too.
They're only on the first home screen, and it just doesn't look right. So those are the two home screen things that they need to do. Another big one is navigation is a nightmare. Figuring out slide over and split screen.
I hate that.
Opening
You're
and
right. Good
launching and
point.
all of that is just it's not intuitive. It's not the way you want. And then the launch of the trackpad cursor just made it worse because you go to do something, it doesn't work, and then you got to reach up and that doesn't work, and it doesn't quite get there the way I want it to be. What I want from the iPad is something that is right between a Mac and an iPhone. And it's iPad OS 15 or 14 is not there. It's way closer to an iPhone than it is to a Mac. And maybe I don't need 30 floating windows like I have on my Mac, but there needs to be some way to get better multitasking, better navigation, better understanding between apps while you're working, so you don't have to click in and out and everything. And it's just it needs to be rethought for now. When Steve Jobs launched the iPad, it was a larger iPhone, and people made fun of it because of that, but that's what it was supposed to be. He wanted it to be that way, and it worked really well. It was because you were reading. Remember, the iPhone screen was 3.5 inches at the time. You were trying to read all this text on this tiny little thing. Even us young people can. It was hard to read.
Thank you.
On the
I
iPhone.
appreciate being included in the young people comment. Thanks, Michael. Thanks a lot.
So they took that simplicity and made it bigger, made it easier to use, made it for a specific use case, the kitchen, the living room, things like that. It hasn't changed. It's still, even though iPad OS is a separate thing, it still very much feels like a larger iPhone.
Right.
And now it's not even as good as the iPhone, in my opinion.
Well, especially when you've got something as large as the iPad. The largest iPad Pro is what, 12.9
13 inches. Yeah,
so that's the size of a laptop. Okay, so you should be able to do something with your desktop or home screen or whatever in terms of like opening up apps, moving windows around, and be able to actually use that space in a way that you can't. So
and
when
treat it like a landscape device.
Yeah,
I feel, and you don't have to look any further than the way the Apple logo is oriented on the back. Apple still thinks the iPad is a portrait device first, like the iPhone. The iPhone is a portrait device. The iPad is a landscape device. The camera's in the wrong spot. Like, there's so much of it that frustrates me.
So
but
Julia,
it's the best tablet. Let me get on record saying that I've used a bunch of them, and it is hardware wise, it's awesome. Software wise, what you can do is awesome. It doesn't quite get to the point where I want it to be, particularly not for $1,000 device.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I think Donnie here in the comments, who asked the original question, said he agreed, especially about navigation. So that really seems to be
It's crazy.
a common pain point amongst
Yeah.
iPad users.
I bet I'm willing to bet that most of the people listening to this right now don't even understand how to use like slide over and stuff. They don't even know it's there because it just
I know
Apple
it's
doesn't
there
make it
only
intuitive.
whenever it gets screwed up and something's either slid over or it's a drawer
Yeah.
or it's half the screen or
Yeah,
whatever, and I can
it's-
never get back to it.
It's
And
it's
I
so
use these
it's
things, so
right,
it's-
and you use
I
write about
should
and read
know.
about it
It
constantly.
should
yeah, and
be
it's
clear, but it's
Right.
not. Yeah.
it's just not.
Yeah, totally.
And it's it could be a good system. Slide over. I'm not against it as a concept. It's just the execution of it is just shockingly bad, and they haven't gotten any better over what's it been there 4 or 5 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Thomas, also in the chat, just said more flexible and mobile solutions are always welcomed. And I feel like you said, Mike, if an iPad right now looks a lot like an iPhone, I feel like Thomas is kind of onto something in that, like, it needs to be a more mobile and more flexible Mac. Like, it needs to shift
Yes,
more, keep
yes.
the mobility, keep the flexibility, but shift more to actually being like
That should
a mic.
be your inspiration. That's the Mac should be Apple's inspiration for iPad OS 15, not or Mac OS 11 should be the inspiration for iPad OS 15, not iOS 15. It's just Apple separated them. What I thought seemingly when they announced that they were saying this was iPad OS, I think it was 12, maybe 13. I don't know. Whenever they split them, I was excited, genuinely excited. It was like, okay, finally, Apple is going to do something with the iPad that's unique to the iPad. We haven't even gotten that. There's nothing on the iPad except for that wonky navigation that's unique to that device. What are we supposed to be talking about, Ken? This wasn't an
We've
iPad.
gone
Debbie,
off.
this wasn't-
We're
it wasn't an
answering
iPad.
we're
They're not even
answering viewer
introducing
questions.
iPads at WWDC.
We started off at WWDC and we took a detour to iPads because viewers wanted to know.
Yeah, and the OS is due for an upgrade, and maybe we'll get one. Have there been any rumors at all about what to expect out of any of the OS updates that are going to be announced at WWDC, or is this all just like
Nothing.
okay, yeah? So
Yeah.
this is just like
and
your
that's not
specific.
unusual.
That's the one thing Apple can keep secret because they don't have to send
Totally.
it to a,
They're
to
not
a,
building
to a
it somewhere
production
else.
line or
Yeah.
a factory. So
Definitely.
that's all in house, and occasionally, like part of a code will leak, and we'll get a feature or two here. But the lion's share of what we're going to see from that stuff at WWDC will be
Yeah.
a surprise.
Well, fingers crossed for you, and also
I'm
for
not
Donnie and
hopeful
Thomas.
if I
and
haven't made that clear.
Oh, well, yeah, hopefully for you and Donnie and Thomas here in the chat. And to everyone who is watching, just a reminder, if you have any questions or comments about WWDC or just in general, just let us know in the chat. We can definitely fill up, plenty of time talking about them. So iPad OS, iOS, Mac OS,
Yeah.
maybe
Probably
hardware?
TV. Maybe
what's
maybe TV OS. They and also the watch. They always touch on that
Totally, yeah,
stuff.
watch.
It's usually those are lesser deals. If we're talking about interfaces, I think tvOS needs a massive update too, and I'll also couch this by saying I think Apple TV has the best interface of all of the streaming services, but some of them now, Google among them, they're starting to focus more on content rather than apps, and I think that's a smart idea. And I think so Apple has the TV app,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. It's nicely divided. It has all your stuff. It has things that you haven't seen that you're watching. It has things that are suggested based on what you did watch. Apple TV Plus stuff if you're a subscriber, all of your own movies. It's a great app. That should be the home screen. They should take that concept and pull it out so you're always looking at that stuff rather than scrolling around to find the channel that you want or whatever it is. I think that the tvOS interface can be rethought to focus more on movies and TV shows and things like that rather than a bunch of apps that you're only using to get to that stuff anyway.
Agreed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have to be honest. I'm not a big Apple TV user. I don't have like it's not my smart device of choice. I just have a smart TV, and similarly, I don't subscribe to Apple TV Plus. But I've used the app on
Well,
occasion
if you bought an
to like
iPhone in
rent
the last year,
movies.
you have one. You have a subscription.
I have not, but I'm due for an upgrade.
There you go.
So,
well, you'll hopefully, if they extend that, you'll get a free year.
They will.
Honestly,
They'll
I think it's worth the $5.
yeah.
It doesn't have the library that Disney Plus or Netflix or those have.
But
Granted.
they're building that out pretty quickly.
They're
That
building.
library is
There's a
growing.
ton that's in the works, and I'm going to say that everything that I've watched on Apple TV has been quality and extremely engaging, well produced. I can't say that for Netflix or Disney. I mean, they have a ton of stuff, but it's not all great. Apple focuses on, or Apple TV Plus focuses on quality over quantity. And like, for example, I just finished watching this show called Calls. And what it is it's there's no acting on the screen. So it's literally like you're listening to people's phone calls, and there's like visual stuff on the screen to kind of augment that experience. And it tells this story over the course of like 2.5
Sounds like
hours.
Rear Window or voyeuristic or something, Michael.
Well, yeah, kind of. So, but it tells this narrative. It's like a radio play, and it tells this narrative, and it was fantastic. Like they pick their projects very carefully. I liked Servant. I liked Morning Show. To tell
I'm
the
on
truth.
Team for All Mankind myself.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet, but I've heard great things about it. Like
that
they
is
just
awesome.
Yeah. See, they Apple TV gets a bad rap for not having enough to watch, and that needs to change, and it will. But it's very good. The stuff that
It's
is
good
out
and
there
growing
now is
getting
really
better.
good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like that kind of captures what exactly to expect at WWDC. I think importantly, like sort of obviously last year was huge because, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, that was when they announced the transition to, even though it was like rumored, but the actual announcement about the transition to Apple Silicon,
correct.
which is like huge. And obviously not every WWDC needs to be bigger than the last. It's not like this one needs to top last year, but I'm interested to see how they build upon that and whether or not, is it going to be an M2? Is it going to be an M1X?
Yeah, I think
All
we'll definitely
fascinating.
hear about that, the chip in some way.
Yeah.
Hopefully with
Especially if they roll out
some
an
new
iMac.
hardware. Yeah, I mean it could be a real monster year for the Mac.
Mhm.
Last year, they told us about the transition, and we got Big Sur, which was also a pretty big change to OS 10. But taking all that stuff now and now building on the momentum that they got with the MacBooks and the Mac Mini and the M1 chip, it could be a huge year for the Mac. The Mac could really be the absolute star of the show here.
Right. Great. Well, exciting stuff. June 7th through 11th. Which day's the keynote?
The 7th.
first
I mean,
day.
they haven't announced
First
that,
day.
but it'll be 10 a.m. Pacific on June 7th.
All right. Well, now everyone knows. You can see what exactly is going to come up, and hopefully for the sanity of Mike and for our viewers,
Please let
iPad
there be an
OS
iPad OS
and
update,
Ken
for
and
God's
Ken.
sakes. Well, but I'm talking about for
I'll
Michael's
have to find
sanity.
something else to be angry about then.
We'll find something. We'll find
I'm
something.
sure
for
you'll
you.
find something. Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for chatting about WWDC with us. Really appreciate it. And thank you all so much for watching. If you were in the comments and you had a question that we just didn't get to or you didn't ask it in time, do still please leave it and we'll be sure to answer it sometime in the next few days. I usually answer them like as soon as I see them. So won't be too long, won't leave you hanging for too long. So Ken, Mike, thank you both so much. And thank you all so much again for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. If you're watching over on LinkedIn, be sure to come over to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk. We are live just about every Thursday, and we've got a ton of other videos posting almost every weekday. So tons of stuff there for you to watch. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.